Let's hear more about this holiday and set our dedication in context. What is Pesach? What is Passover? What are the Jewish values of Passover? What are Jewish values? Here is a word from Rabbi Brant Rosen, a rabbi with Tzedek Chicago Synagogue and a co-founder of the Jewish Voice for Peace Rabbinical Council. Welcome to the show, Rabbi Brant Rosen of the Tzedek Chicago Synagogue. You're also a co-founder of the JVP Rabbinical Council. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So, happy Passover.
To you as well, Katie.
Can you tell people about Passover, the significance of the holiday, and why it makes sense to be doing a Seder in the streets right now for Gaza?
So Passover or Pesach is one of the central Jewish holidays. It comes from the Torah, it comes from the Bible. It is a commemoration of the mythic story of the Israelites' exodus from biblical Egypt. And it has been observed by Jews for centuries. It's a week-long festival that involves abstaining from bread products and leavened products, but the signature moment of the holiday is a Seder, or sometimes two Seders, that take place on the first 2 days of Passover, where Jews have folks over to their homes, sit around the table, and have a meal while they tell the story of the Exodus. But not only tell the story, there is a whole pedagogy to the Seder, in which questions are asked and the meaning of liberation in general is interrogated. And that is really the central, I think, moment of the festival, is this idea of not only telling the story, but plumbing the meaning of it for our own day. And that's meant different things for Jews throughout the centuries. But in the current moment, I think, I would even say over the last several decades, there is increasingly a trend toward universalizing the story of the Exodus, and in other words, not only focusing on Jewish liberation per se, but understanding that this mythic story of liberation is something that has been cherished by many different peoples throughout history, and in fact is something that's being experienced in real time. In the late 60s, Rabbi Arthur Wasco, started something that came to be known as the Freedom Seder during the Vietnam War as a way of understanding the Exodus story and liberation in that context. And right now we're witnessing a remarkable in the streets version of these Seders happening on college campuses throughout the country to understand this notion of liberation vis-a-vis Palestinian liberation, and specifically as a way of lifting up a cry against the Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza.
And how does your Jewish identity, your Jewish faith, your Jewish values relate to the struggle against genocide?
Well,
I know, easy question,
on so many
right?
levels. Yeah. I mean, just to go back to the Exodus story, this is the central sacred story of the Jewish people, which is that God is a God of liberation and stands with the oppressed and demands that we call out the oppressor, the pharaohs in every generation. So that is baked into being a Jew on a very, very deep level from our spiritual tradition point of view. In terms of historical memory, to be a Jew after the Holocaust means that genocide, that attempted genocide against our people, is something that is also baked into what it means to be Jewish. The near destruction of European Jewry during World War II. And so, when we read this story and we read about Pharaoh viewing the Israelites as a demographic threat and enacting state violence against them to enslave them, it's impossible to understand the story, I believe, in the current moment without understanding that part of what it means to be Jewish from a historical point of view is to absolutely take a stand against genocide in every manifestation, not only against Jews, but against all peoples.
Can you talk a bit about Tikkun Olam, what that principle is and where it comes from?
Sure. So Tikkun Olam literally means repairing the world, and it has come in contemporary times to be experienced as another very central Jewish spiritual imperative. It originally comes from concepts in medieval Jewish mysticism that viewed the world as a broken place, that there was this kind of cosmic snafu that occurred during the creation of the world, and there are sparks of divinity that have been scattered about the universe, and that the sacred task of the Jew is to reunite these sparks, bring them back together to engage in repair in a very cosmic sense. But that has come to be understood on a socio-political level as well, I would say, that when we engage in acts of justice, when we do the kinds of things we've been talking about, when we call out the oppressor, when we seek to dismantle state violence and transform it into equity for all, that is engaging in Tikkun Olam, in repair. And so many contemporary Jews understand Tikkun Olam both in terms of service and direct action, but also in terms of fundamentally restructuring society itself to be a more equitable and just place for all.
And what are your thoughts on the protests that we're seeing at universities, not at universities, the discourse around anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic speech? What are your thoughts on this?
I can't remember a Passover when I was more deeply moved. I have to tell you, it's breathtaking. You know, what we are seeing is grassroots spiritual political action in its purest form. You know, we are seeing this very cynical weaponization of the claim of anti-Semitism on college campuses as a way to gain, frankly, for the right to gain political power, but also to draw attention away from the very real genocide that is occurring against the Palestinian people. And you know, the claim of Jewish students being unsafe because other students are protesting genocide has just been so deeply hypocritical and galling to observe. And so to see Jewish students and allies coming together and celebrating Passover openly in quads on college campuses to show, first of all, that there's nothing unsafe about being a Jew in public, but also to use their spiritual tradition as an act of solidarity is just, to me, that is the purest form of Passover there is. And it is a political statement that it is perfectly safe to be a Jew. It may make some Jews uncomfortable to call for a free Palestine, but this is I think the best possible response to the very cynical political ploys that are being taken to weaponize anti-Semitism on campuses and throughout the country.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Really appreciated talking to you.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Katie.
Have a great Seder.